My name is Donna, and this is how my journey begins. I was raised in a small town, bouncing from one foster home to another until I settled in with Walter. They offered me something invaluable, a stable environment, which was something I had longed for throughout my childhood. Life was pretty uneventful until I went to college, the first one from my foster family to venture into the big city for higher education. I majored in Chinese, worked tirelessly, and eventually secured a job as a translator at an international trading firm. For a girl from a small town, this felt like a significant achievement. One unremarkable Tuesday, I found myself in a quaint cafe near my office, ordering my usual black coffee when I noticed him. David was his name, tall, with a disarmingly charming smile. He looked up from his phone, all business yet relaxed, and our eyes met. "Haven't seen you around here before," I ventured, trying to sound nonchalant as I joined him with my coffee. His smile broadened. "Just trying to get away from office chaos," he replied, introducing himself. We clicked instantly, and what started as casual coffee dates quickly turned into something more. Weeks flowed into months, and soon a year had passed, and we were discussing life beyond just casual meetups. David, a city native, knew his way around and had an effortless charm. But life has its rough patches. After a year together, we decided to get married. I was ecstatic, but wanted him to meet the people who shaped me, my foster parents, Walter. They were down-to-earth folks, living a simple, hard-working life. They were fixing up their old house, so they were renting a modest apartment. It wasn't much, but it was packed with love and warmth. I remember warning David, "It's humble, but it's full of great memories." He nodded, though I could tell he felt out of place. That weekend with my parents was special to me. They treated David like family. However, David seemed restless, frequently checking his watch, eager to return to the city. The drive back was silent, tension filling the air until I couldn't take it anymore. "You've been quite silent, David. What's on your mind?" He finally opened up, admitting, "Donna, your folks are great, but our backgrounds are just so different." His words hurt, but I remained calm. "And what exactly does that mean?" I asked. "It's just a different lifestyle, Donna. It's not what I'm used to, but it doesn't change my feelings for you," he hastened to add. I stared out the car window, biting my lip, pondering the differences between my simple roots and his polished world. "David, fancy isn't necessary, but respect for each other's background is," I replied. He agreed, affirming his love, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of disconnection. As I lay awake that night, I reflected on the simplicity I cherished versus the complex world I was about to join. Shortly after we visited my parents, it was time for me to meet David's family. His mother, Rachel, lived in a luxurious high-rise in the city, her apartment a testament to wealth, adorned with lavish decor. As I stepped into this new world, I wondered if David and I could truly bridge the gap between our worlds. When we arrived at her place, Rachel greeted us at the door, impeccably dressed in designer clothes from head to toe. Stepping into her apartment felt like entering the glossy pages of a luxury magazine.
"Donna, is it?"
"And what is it you do?" she inquired, eyeing me as though I were a product she might consider buying. "I'm a translator. I work with Chinese clients at a trading company," I responded, my voice steady despite the scrutiny. "Oh, impressive," she commented with a half-smile, though her eyes continued to scan me, seemingly searching for a flaw. Eventually, my background and my foster parents came up in conversation. Her expression soured slightly. "From the province and fostered, you say? I don't think that's quite fitting for my son," she remarked. David quickly intervened. "Mom, please. Donna's wonderful, and I love her. We're getting married." That set off another round of questions. "Married? And when is this happening? How are you planning it?" Rachel's tone was piercing, overly inquisitive. "We're thinking something small, intimate, just us in Florida," I said, hoping she would appreciate the romantic simplicity. But Rachel's reaction was of outright shock. "Florida? Just the two of you? No, that won't do. What will my friends think if I can't even throw my only son a proper wedding?" I maintained my composure. "It's our day, Rachel. We just want something true to us, without all the fuss. She was clearly upset. "This discussion is over," she declared and abruptly left the room. David gave me an apologetic look and whispered, "Let me talk to her. We'll sort this out." 5 months flew by, and there we were in Florida. It was meant to be just David and me, but Rachel appeared uninvited, camera in hand, ready to capture every moment. It felt as if she was constantly there, ensuring she had content to share online. David seemed unaffected, enjoying the sun and the ceremony. I tried to keep smiling, whispering to him as we stood on the beach. "I thought it would be just us." He squeezed my hand. "I know, I'm sorry. She's just excited, I guess. Let's just try to enjoy our day." Rachel was all over the place, her phone perpetually out. "Smile here. Oh, this will look fabulous on my feed." I felt more like a prop in her social media spectacle than a bride on her wedding day. It was supposed to be our special moment, but it had morphed into one of Rachel's lavish displays. Returning home as newlyweds should have been about enjoying those tender, love-filled days. You know, breakfast in bed, slow dances in our living room. And at first it was. David slipped a stunning ring on my finger the day we returned, a family heirloom that sparkled irresistibly. "Be careful with that ring. It's more than just expensive. It's an heirloom," Rachel interjected, looming over us like a dark cloud on a sunny day. Her words felt more like a warning, dampening the joy slightly. The first few weeks, David and I reveled in our newlywed bliss, stealing kisses and cooking dinners together. But then Rachel began showing up without notice, disrupting our routine. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, the doorbell rang. There she stood, Rachel, with a look as if she were about to inspect a military base. "Just checking in on my favorite newlyweds," she announced. As Rachel's gaze swept through our home, it felt like she was hunting for flaws. I attempted politeness, engaging in light conversation even as she drifted towards the kitchen, her fingers trailing across every countertop. "Donna, darling, do you ever clean this place? And where are the fresh vegetables?" "A man needs his greens," she commented, her voice dripping with criticism. When I relayed the encounter to David later, he shrugged it off. "She means well, babe. Just try to go with it," he advised. "Go with it," I repeated, my frustration rising. "She's treating me like I'm on trial in my own home." David kissed my forehead as if that simple gesture could smooth everything over. "She's lonely, Donna. Let's cut her some slack, okay?" But the slack soon became a never-ending concession. One evening, after a particularly exhilarating day at work having signed a major contract with a new Chinese client, I arrived home to find Rachel sitting in my living room, an uninvited presence brewing trouble. "I heard you've been spending a lot of time at the office. Late nights, she inquired, eyebrow raised, her voice heavy with suspicion. "It's a big project, lots of new opportunities," I explained, trying to keep the conversation light. However, her disapproval was palpable. 3 days later, Rachel showed up at my office, loudly counting the male colleagues around me and insinuating that I might be involved with one of them. Then, without any invitation, she barged into my boss's office. Seeing that he was an older man, she exclaimed, "Well, she definitely won't mess with the old man." I was mortified, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. I asked her to leave and apologized to my boss and colleagues for the disruption. Thankfully, my boss, Mr. Roy, took it in stride with a laugh, but the embarrassment lingered. That night, I had reached my breaking point. I confronted David in our bedroom, my voice strained. "Your mom crossed a line today, David. She's accusing me of cheating. It has to stop." He sighed deeply, the fatigue evident in his voice. "Just try to get along, please." For me, but getting along was increasingly feeling like tolerating the intolerable. The strain began to affect our relationship. Lately, Rachel had been whispering in David's ear, and he had started to criticize everything about me, from my choice of clothing to my working hours, things he had never minded before. "Donna, why do you have to wear that to work?" David frowned one morning as I dressed in a simple blouse and skirt. "It's professional, David. What's wrong with it?" I responded, adjusting my skirt. "It's too much. You're just inviting comments, working with all those guys. he retorted, his tone sharp. It was clear this wasn't really about my clothes. The tension escalated further on my birthday. My boss, who had always been a fatherly figure to me, gifted me a book with a note that read, "To my practical daughter." It was a harmless, thoughtful gift, but David saw it as proof of his unfounded fears. "You see? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Why is he giving you gifts?" "It's not right, Donna," David exclaimed, visibly upset. David's reaction was fueled by Rachel's constant meddling. All this tension made my upcoming business trip to a neighboring city, a trip to help set up a new factory for our company, a welcome escape from the ongoing drama at home. Eager for a respite from the constant tension at home, I was grateful for the business trip. It proceeded smoothly, culminating in a dinner with our Chinese partners. As we left the restaurant, I noticed shadows lingering nearby. The street was dimly lit, and my heart raced with apprehension. As I walked towards my hotel, the shadows seemed to edge closer. Feeling unsafe, I asked two colleagues to accompany me. As we approached the hotel, illuminated by lanterns, the shadows resolved into familiar figures, David and Rachel. "What the hell, David? What are you doing here?" I exclaimed, my shock evident. Rachel stepped forward, her face contorted with anger. "We're making sure you're not up to no good. Can't trust you around all these men, can we?" My colleagues looked on, and I felt a flush of embarrassment heat my face. "This is ridiculous. You're both acting like I'm some kind of criminal," I said, trying to defuse the situation, but Rachel was relentless. "I'll be telling your parents about this. They should know what kind of woman you've turned out to be." I couldn't suppress a bitter laugh. "Go ahead, tell them. They'll laugh you out of town." The ride back to our hotel was painfully silent. David and his mother sat in the front, while I was isolated in the back, tears blurring the city lights into colorful streaks as I gazed out the window. I loved David, but I felt trapped in a nightmare with Rachel playing the relentless villain. True to her word, Rachel visited my parents. My mother's shaky voice on the phone relayed the ordeal. "She was here, Donna," Mom said, her voice strained. "She demanded to see her father right away, so I gave her the address to his workshop." My heart sank. Dad was at his workshop, a place where he spent his days crafting and creating in his element. Mom continued, "Your mother-in-law saw your father in his work clothes, stained from the day's labor. When your father went to greet her, he apologized for not shaking her hand because they were dirty. She looked at his hands, made a disgusted face, and scoffed. She said she understands now why you turned out the way you did, and left without another word." "Thanks for telling me, Mom. I need to think about what to do," I responded, hanging up, a mix of anger and hurt swirling inside me. The very next day, Rachel confronted me again in our living room, her eyes cold and judgmental. "Donna, now I see where you get your manners, or should I say, lack thereof. Your father, an ordinary worker, his hands permanently dirted. What kind of upbringing, what kind of manners could you possibly teach any children?" Her words cut deep. Before I could respond, David entered the room. Instead of defending me, he went straight to his mother, embracing her. "Mom, I'm sorry about all this. Donna's family, they're just different from us." That was the final straw. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Different? Is that your way of saying my family isn't good enough for your high standards?" My voice broke, the hurt too profound. David looked at me, his eyes devoid of understanding. "It's just how things are, Donna. We come from different worlds," David said, his voice flat, resigning us to an apparent fate dictated by circumstance. "So that's it, huh?" My voice rose, thick with emotion, as despair and disbelief tangled within me. "If I'm such a disgrace, why don't we just end this? If I'm so below you, let's get a divorce." Rachel's eyes sparkled with almost gleeful anticipation. "Well, that sounds like a splendid idea," she chimed in, her tone almost celebratory. David just nodded passively, adding, "Maybe that's for the best." I spent the night alone in our guest room, tears streaming down my face as the harsh words and cold dismissals echoed in my mind. The man I thought I knew, the life I thought we were building, it all seemed like a facade now. As dawn's early light seeped through the blinds, casting a soft glow in the room, I realized it was time to make some hard but necessary decisions. The first person I called was my boss, Mr. Roy, whose support had always been a cornerstone in my professional life. "Mr. Roy, it's Donna," I began, my voice unsteady. "I'm facing some personal issues and need to take some time off. I can take it unpaid if necessary." "Donna," he replied promptly, his voice laced with genuine concern, "you're one of our most valuable team members. Take a paid vacation, sort things out, and come back when you're ready. We'll manage here." His kindness was a balm to my frayed nerves. "Thank you, Mr. Roy. I can't tell you how much this means to me," I managed, feeling the weight of gratitude. Next, I called my mother, my eternal anchor in any storm. As soon as she answered, I let it all pour out, my words rushing in a torrent of emotion. "Mom, it's all falling apart. I can't do this anymore with David and his mom. It's just too much." Her voice, ever calm and soothing, steadied me. "Donna, we've been prepared for this call. Your father and I are on our way. Just pack what you need." As I hung up, I looked around the room at the few personal items I had brought into this house, none of which felt like they truly belonged to me anymore. I began to pack, each item a stark reminder of the life I had imagined with David. Rachel appeared at the doorway, her presence casting a chill. "Remember, Donna, only take what you bought with your own money. Don't think about taking anything else," she said, her voice cold and accusatory. It wasn't long before I heard the familiar crunch of gravel under the tires of an old vehicle. Looking out the window, I saw my parents' beat-up pickup truck pulling up. David and Rachel followed me outside, their expressions a mix of smugness and curiosity. As my parents' truck stopped, David scoffed loudly. "Sure that old thing will even make it back?" My father, embodying a quiet strength, stepped out and faced David without a word. He handed over the divorce papers, his eyes steady and unwavering. David snatched the papers and signed them with a smirk, his mother chuckling beside him. "Glad to be rid of this mess," he muttered. Arriving at my parents' home, a large and welcoming structure that now felt more like a sanctuary, I spent the next few hours unpacking and trying to settle my nerves. The peace of familiar surroundings slowly calmed me. That evening, as I sat looking out at the garden, my phone rang. It was Rachel. "Donna, you need to return the ring. It's a family heirloom, not a parting gift," she demanded sharply. I paused, taking a deep breath before responding firmly. "Rachel, that ring was given to me as a wedding gift. If you want it, come and get it yourself." As I ended the call, the morning light began to spill over the horizon, heralding new beginnings and a day filled with possibilities. As I peered from the upstairs window, David and his mother, Rachel, stood at the gate, their faces marked by astonishment as they looked up at my family home. Their disbelief lent them a nearly comical air, and I couldn't suppress a smirk. They appeared so out of place against the sprawling, meticulously landscaped yard, looking utterly bewildered. Turning from the window, I went downstairs where my parents awaited, exchanging knowing glances with them before we stepped outside. My parents passed David and Rachel without a word, heading towards the garage with serene composure, ignoring the puzzled stares from my estranged husband and his mother. As the garage door swung open, revealing a lineup of sleek, high-end cars, David's audible gasp filled the air. My father casually selected a gleaming black sedan for us to ride in. Just as we were about to drive away, David finally found his voice. "Donna, what is all this? This house, these cars?" I stepped out of the car, approaching them with a newfound calm. "This is my family home, David. My father owns a glass factory and several commercial properties. This is where I grew up." Rachel's face twisted with confusion and disbelief. "But your father, he was wearing work clothes, his hands were dirty." I couldn't help but smile at her naivete. "Yes, Rachel, he was launching a new product line. It's a tradition in his company to get involved hands-on. It doesn't mean he's not successful or wealthy." They stood there, stunned, unable to reconcile the image of the hard-working man they had seen with the opulence around them. Just then, a group of our neighbors approached, their faces bright with smiles. "Good morning, Mr. Walter. We heard about your latest charity event. It's wonderful what you're doing. You've got our support in the mayoral elections, you know," one of them called out cheerfully. My parents nodded and thanked them, while David's face registered a mix of awe and regret, his eyes flitting between his mother and me. Rachel looked as though she had swallowed something bitter, her earlier arrogance evaporated in the face of undeniable reality. I turned back to the car, giving David and his mother one last look. "Well, I guess you see things a little differently now," I said, not unkindly. Their expressions of shock and realization confirmed that my past, filled with hardships and misunderstandings, was truly behind me. The morning's revelations were still settling when David made a sudden move. He shoved his mother aside so forcefully that she stumbled. "It's all your fault, you know. You pushed her away with your nonsense," he shouted at her, his voice tinged with bitterness. Then, turning to me, his demeanor shifted completely. He rushed over, trying to pull me into an embrace, his hands reaching out as if trying to erase everything with a simple touch. "Donna, please listen to me. We were good together, weren't we? I love you, I really do," he pleaded, his voice a desperate whisper. I recoiled from his touch, the warmth we once shared long extinguished by his betrayal. "Stop, David. Just stop," I said firmly, pushing him away with all the strength I could muster. I quickly got back into the car, my heart pounding. My father, without a word, pressed the remote control, and the garage doors began to close behind us, sealing away the tumultuous chapter of my life with David and Rachel for good. David and his mother stood at the end of the driveway, their voices echoing with desperation and disbelief. "Donna, please forgive us. We didn't mean any of it," David yelled, his voice cracking with emotional strain. Rachel, her usual poise crumbled, scrambled on the ground trying to salvage her lost dignity. "Donna, my dear, I was wrong, please," she pleaded. As we drove away, the weight of the moment bore down on me, yet a part of me sought closure, a definitive end to this turbulent chapter of my life. As we reached the end of the driveway, I asked my father to stop the car. David, seeing this as his chance, hurried up to us, his face alight with a flicker of hope, while his mother, disheveled and desperate, struggled to keep up. Without a word, I rolled down the window, slipped the wedding ring off my finger, and held it out briefly. David's eyes widened as he grasped the finality of the gesture. "This is where it ends, David," I declared, my voice firm and resolute. With that, I tossed the ring out of the window. It caught a brief glint of morning sunlight before landing softly on the grass beside the road. Rachel, ever the opportunist, rushed to where the ring had fallen, her hands frantically searching through the grass. I rolled up the window, shutting out their pleas and the painful past they represented. "Let's go, Dad," I murmured quietly. 3 weeks later, I found myself back in the city, settling into a new apartment that felt more like home than any place had in a long time. I returned to work, where Mr. Roy welcomed me back with open arms and a gentle understanding that eased my reintegration into the routine. David made several attempts to reach out to me, each plea more desperate than the last. He claimed to have severed ties with his mother and begged for another chance, but some things, once broken, cannot be mended. I told him firmly that it was over for good this time and blocked his number. No more words were necessary. It was time to move forward on my terms.